1 in 3 Americans today is lactose intolerant. 1 in 5 children develops severe allergies to dairy products. Millions suffer from chronic inflammation, digestive problems, and autoimmune conditions that doctors directly link to milk consumption. But here's what doesn't make sense. For over 1,000 years, Europeans drank milk every single day of their lives, gave it to their children from infancy, and never experienced these problems. Not rarely, never. The difference isn't genetics, it isn't evolution, it's something they knew about milk that we've completely forgotten. And what the modern dairy industry did to destroy that knowledge is one of the most profitable betrayals in food history. If you've ever felt sick after drinking milk, if you've watched your children develop mysterious allergies, if you've been told you're lactose intolerant when your ancestors drank milk without issues, you need to hear this story because what you're about to discover will make you question everything you thought you knew about dairy. The milk in your refrigerator right now isn't really milk anymore. It's an industrial byproduct that's been so completely transformed that your body doesn't even recognize it as food. And medieval peasants with zero scientific knowledge understood this truth better than modern nutritionists with decades of education. And if you want to keep discovering knowledge that history buried, subscribe now to Medieval Histories and hit that notification bell so you never miss another revelation that the food industry would rather keep hidden forever. What happened to milk between the 13th century and today is a perfect example of how we took something that worked flawlessly for human health and destroyed it in the name of profit, convenience, and corporate control. They told us it was progress. They told us it was safer. They told us pasteurization was protecting our children. But the evidence shows something completely different, something so disturbing that once you see it, you'll never look at a gallon of milk the same way again. You've probably felt it yourself, that heavy feeling in your stomach after drinking a glass of milk, the bloating that appears within minutes, the way your sinuses fill up, the way your skin breaks out, the way your energy crashes instead of rising. Your doctor probably told you it's normal, that many adults develop lactose intolerance, that you should just switch to almond milk or oat milk or some other substitute. But here's what they didn't tell you. Your grandmother probably drank milk her entire life without a single problem. Your great-grandfather grew up on a farm where children drank fresh milk straight from the cow 3 times a day and never got sick, never developed allergies, never needed an EpiPen or a lactose pill or a dairy-free diet. What changed? It wasn't your genetics. It wasn't your body's ability to process dairy. It was the milk itself. Today, over 70% of the global population experiences some degree of lactose intolerance, and in America, that number climbs every single year. Doctors see children as young as 2 years old developing severe reactions to milk. The same milk that the dairy industry advertises is essential for growing bodies. Parents watch their babies scream in pain from colic, cover themselves in eczema, struggle with chronic ear infections, and the pediatrician says it's all normal, just part of childhood. But it's not normal. It's not natural. It's the direct result of what industrial processing does to milk, stripping away everything that made it digestible, everything that made it nourishing, everything that made it the superfood that built strong bones and healthy immune systems for countless generations. If you're like most Americans, you've been told that raw milk is dangerous, that pasteurization saved millions of lives, that drinking unpasteurized dairy is like playing Russian roulette with deadly bacteria. You've heard the horror stories, seen the warning labels, watched the news reports about outbreaks and contamination, and yet medieval people drank raw milk every single day for over 1,000 years, gave it to infants, to pregnant women, to the elderly, to the sick, and somehow they didn't all die from bacterial infections. Somehow they thrived on it. Somehow it was considered one of the most healing, most strengthening foods available to common people. That feeling of wrongness you get when you drink modern milk, that's not lactose intolerance. That's your body trying to tell you something important, trying to tell you that what you're consuming isn't really food anymore. Before we dive deeper into this story, drop a comment and tell me, what city, what state, or what country are you watching from right now? I love knowing where each person in this community comes from, this community of people searching for knowledge that was buried. Leave your location down below because what you're about to discover will completely change how you see dairy for the rest of your life. And I want to know how far this message reaches. How many people are waking up to the truth about what's really in their food? Whether you're watching from California or Texas, from Canada or Australia, from a big city or a small farm town, this information applies to you because the same industrial process that destroyed milk in America destroyed it everywhere. So take 2 seconds, scroll down, and let me know where you are right now, and then let's go back in time and see what real milk actually looked like. We're in the year 1243 in a village outside Canterbury in England. The sun is just beginning to rise over the rolling hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and the air is cool and fresh with the smell of wet grass and morning dew. You're standing in a small stone dairy attached to a peasant family's cottage, and in front of you is a woman named Eleanor, a dairymaid whose hands are already busy with the day's first milking. She's sitting on a low wooden stool next to a brown cow, and you can hear the rhythmic sound of milk hitting the bottom of a wooden pail, a sound that's been the same for thousands of years. The cow is calm, chewing quietly on hay, and Eleanor works with practice deficiency, her movements smooth and confident. She doesn't rush. There's no machinery, no automation, no timer telling her to speed up. This is a process that takes as long as it takes, and she knows every moment of it matters. When the pail is full, she carries it carefully into the dairy, a cool room with thick stone walls that stay cold even in summer, and she pours the milk through a clean cloth into a large ceramic crock. You notice something immediately. The milk is thick, creamy, with a layer of yellow cream already rising to the top. It doesn't look like the watery white liquid in modern grocery stores. It looks substantial, rich, alive. And within minutes of milking, that same milk is being served to the family for breakfast, mixed with oatmeal, used to make fresh cheese, given to children who drink it down without a second thought, and then run outside to work and play with boundless energy. Eleanor's hands aren't gloved, the pail isn't sterilized in the modern sense, the milk isn't refrigerated to 38 degrees. There's no pasteurization, no homogenization, no standardization, and yet nobody gets sick. The children don't develop allergies, the elderly don't suffer from inflammation. The milk nourishes them completely, provides calcium and protein and vitamins and living enzymes that their bodies recognize and absorb effortlessly. This scene, this exact process, happened in thousands of villages across Europe every single morning for over 1,000 years, and the milk produced this way was considered a gift, a source of strength, a food so valuable that it was sometimes used to pay rent or taxes. What made it so different? What did Eleanor know, without knowing she knew it, that modern dairy science has completely forgotten? The secret is in 3 simple words: raw, whole, and fresh. But to understand why those 3 things matter so much, we need to talk about what milk actually is, at the molecular level, what it contains, and what happens when you change it. Real milk, the kind that comes straight from a healthy cow, is a living substance. Not metaphorically living. Actually, biologically living. It contains millions of beneficial bacteria, the same bacteria that exist in your gut and help you digest food. It contains enzymes, specifically lactase, the exact enzyme your body needs to break down lactose, the milk sugar that supposedly makes people intolerant. Think about that for a second. Raw milk contains the enzyme needed to digest itself. It's a perfect food, designed by nature to be completely self-processing. When a medieval child drank raw milk, their body didn't have to produce lactase because the milk provided it. When you drink pasteurized milk, all those enzymes are dead, destroyed by heat, and your body has to do all the work alone. If you don't produce enough lactase naturally, you can't digest the milk, and you get all the symptoms of lactose intolerance: bloating, gas, cramps, diarrhea. The milk didn't give you lactose intolerance. The processing did. Raw milk also contains immunoglobulins, antibodies that boost your immune system, and beneficial bacteria that populate your gut and crowd out harmful pathogens. It contains vitamins in their natural bioavailable forms, especially vitamin D and vitamin K2, which work together to help your body absorb calcium and build strong bones. It contains healthy fats, including conjugated linoleic acid, which has been shown in dozens of studies to reduce inflammation, support heart health, and even help prevent certain types of cancer. And all of this exists in a delicate, balanced matrix that works together synergistically. You can't isolate one part and get the same benefit. You can't remove the fat and keep the nutrition. You can't heat it to death and expect it to nourish life. But in 1964, the United States government made raw milk sales illegal in most states. They said it was for public safety. They said bacteria like E. coli and Salmonella and Listeria made raw milk too dangerous to drink. They pointed to outbreaks, to hospitalizations, to deaths. And on the surface, it made sense. Pasteurization, the process of heating milk to 161 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 seconds, kills bacteria. It makes milk shelf-stable. It allows massive dairy operations to ship milk thousands of miles and keep it fresh for weeks. It was hailed as a triumph of modern food science, a way to protect public health and feed growing cities. But here's what they didn't tell you. The bacteria problem wasn't caused by raw milk. It was caused by industrial dairy farming. Let me explain. In 1243, Eleanor's cow lived outside, ate fresh grass, walked around freely, and was milked once or twice a day in small amounts. The milk went from cow to consumption in hours, sometimes minutes. There was no time for bacteria to multiply, no opportunity for contamination, and the beneficial bacteria in the milk actively prevented harmful bacteria from taking hold. The entire system was designed for safety through freshness and natural bacterial balance. But by the early 1900s, dairy farming had changed completely. Cows were packed into urban dairies, fed industrial waste and brewery grain, kept in filthy conditions, and milked by workers who had no connection to the animals or the product. Milk sat in unclean containers, was transported in open wagons, was sold from ladles dipped into communal buckets. Of course, it became contaminated. Of course, it made people sick. The solution should have been to fix the farming practices to return to cleanliness and animal welfare and freshness. Instead, the dairy industry chose pasteurization because it was cheaper and easier and allowed them to keep producing milk in the same filthy conditions. They could keep cows in confinement, feed them cheap grain, milk them with machines, and just heat the contamination to death. Problem solved. Except it wasn't solved. They killed the bacteria, but they also killed everything that made milk nutritious. And now they sell you dead milk, milk that's been heated and homogenized and stripped of everything valuable, milk that causes inflammation instead of preventing it, milk that your body rejects instead of craving, and they charge you $5 a gallon for the privilege of consuming it. Researchers at Stanford University in California conducted a study in 2011 comparing the nutritional content of raw milk versus pasteurized milk. They found that pasteurization destroys 100% of the lactase enzyme, 60 to 90% of the vitamin C, and significant amounts of vitamins B6 and B12. They found that the protein structure in pasteurized milk is denatured, meaning your body has a harder time recognizing and using it. They found that the calcium in pasteurized milk is less bioavailable because the enzymes that help absorption are destroyed. In other words, you can drink all the pasteurized milk you want and still develop osteoporosis because your body can't actually use the calcium. A separate study at the University of British Columbia in Canada followed over 8,000 children and found that those who consumed raw milk had a 60% lower risk of developing allergies and asthma compared to children who drank pasteurized milk. 60%. That's not a small difference. That's the difference between a generation of healthy children and a generation dependent on inhalers and EpiPens. Another study published in the Journal of Allergy and Clinical Immunology in 2015 tracked families in rural Europe and found that children who grew up drinking raw milk from small farms had dramatically stronger immune systems, fewer respiratory infections, and better overall health outcomes than their urban counterparts drinking store-bought milk. The evidence is overwhelming, and it's not new. Scientists have known for decades that pasteurization destroys the nutritional value of milk. But the dairy industry doesn't want you to know that, because if you knew, you might start asking why you're paying for dead milk, why you're feeding it to your children, why the government made it illegal for you to access the real thing. And this is where the story gets truly infuriating. They didn't just destroy milk and move on. They created an entire industry around fixing the problems that pasteurization caused. You're lactose intolerant now? Here, buy lactose-free milk for $8 a gallon. Your children have allergies? Try our hypoallergenic formula for $40 a can. You're not getting enough calcium? Take these supplements for $20 a bottle. They stripped the nutrition out of milk, sold you the broken product, and then sold you a dozen other products to compensate for what they removed. It's the perfect scam. And they did it with the government's full support, with laws that make it illegal in most states for small farmers to sell you raw milk, even if both you and the farmer want that transaction to happen. In 1266, if you wanted fresh milk, you walked to your neighbor's farm or milked your own cow. You had complete control over your food, complete knowledge of where it came from, complete trust in its quality. Today, you can buy milk that's been heated, homogenized, standardized, fortified with synthetic vitamins, and shipped from a factory farm 1,000 miles away. But you cannot legally buy fresh raw milk from a local farmer in most of America. They took your right to access real food and replaced it with dependence on industrial products that make you sick, and then they convinced you that this is progress, that this is safety, that anyone who questions it is a dangerous conspiracy theorist ignoring science. But the science actually supports raw milk. The history supports raw milk. The only thing that supports pasteurization is corporate profit. The good news is that knowledge wasn't completely lost, and more people are waking up to the truth every single day. In states where raw milk sales are legal, small farms are thriving, families are healing, children are growing up without the allergies and digestive problems that plague their pasteurized milk-drinking peers. You can find raw milk if you look for it, and if it's not legal in your state, you can find herd share programs where you technically own part of a cow and receive milk as an owner, not a customer. You can ask questions at farmers markets, search online for local farms, join communities of people who prioritize real food over industrial convenience. Want to know if you've been fooled by the dairy industry? Do this right now. Go to your refrigerator, take out your milk, and read the label. If it says pasteurized, if it says ultra-pasteurized, if it says homogenized, you're not drinking real milk. You're drinking an industrial product that's been so completely transformed that it barely resembles what Eleanor poured into that ceramic crock in 1243. And if you've been suffering from digestive issues, from inflammation, from allergies that doctors can't explain, try eliminating pasteurized dairy for 30 days and see what happens. Better yet, if you have access to raw milk from a clean, trusted source, try that instead and notice the difference. Notice how your body responds to real food the way it's supposed to, with energy instead of inflammation, with satisfaction instead of cravings. with health instead of symptoms. This knowledge wasn't lost, it was just buried. And every time you choose real food over industrial substitutes, every time you support a small farm over a factory, every time you question what you've been told and seek the truth, you're rescuing wisdom that kept generations healthy when life was much harder than it is today. If this video opened your eyes to what the dairy industry hides, hit that like button down below. It really helps the channel keep bringing these truths that few have the courage to tell. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now to Medieval Histories and hit that notification bell, because every week we unearth more knowledge that they'd rather you never discovered. See you in the next video.